Hey everyone, and welcome to our young adult podcast, Adultish. Hey everyone, we are so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining our podcast, Adultish. And today we have an incredible conversation planned for you about career and calling. And in order to have that conversation, we have two amazing guests with us. And by the way, also my name is Gabe. We're so glad that you guys are with us. And I want our guests to introduce themselves really quick. So we're gentlemen here at CF. We're gonna start ladies first.
Thank you. My name is Auri Hathaway, and I've been here at Christ Fellowship for 12 years. I've been married to my husband, Shane, for 18 years.
Let's
we have two beautiful children. Haley's 14, Gavin is 9. I'm a homeschool mom, and my career is National Sales Director with Mary Kay. So grateful for that for 19 years now. And I have the honor of serving here at CF at Young Adults PB on Tuesday nights. I also lead a small group for women, and then I also get to serve on the board here.
No big deal. No big deal. It's just no big deal. That rap sheet was like, bam. And my brother.
My name is Sam Lanero. Start off with what I do here at CF. I get to be I have the privilege of being the Young Adults Director here for Palmetto Bay.
Let's go.
I am married to a beautiful woman named Stephanie. We have 2 little girls, 5 and 2. Those aren't their names. Those are Paola and Noel, respectively. I've been at CF now for 10 years.
Wow,
that's
awesome.
Insane.
Yeah,
it's
Springs
insane.
days.
Springs days.
Let's go.
And then as my career, I actually work for UHealth as a contract specialist in the procurement department.
So a lot of different things here, right? You know, Mary Kay, and you also have done different things, and now you're working for UHealth. And you know, for me, as you guys know, obviously I work here as a pastor here at Christ Fellowship. That's my career, and we're gonna get into that in a little bit. And before we get into this conversation, before we get our engines going, we just kind of want to get them warmed up. So a little quick icebreaker. We want to know, not what you're doing now, but what was your first job like ever?
My first job was cleaning homes.
Okay.
I was 8, and I helped my mom start a cleaning business.
And you got paid for this?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Oh, no, like we ran the house with this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
so
we did.
8 years old.
8.
And you were
early.
Cleaning, that's awesome.
Yes.
And now, do you still enjoy cleaning houses or no?
I do,
Okay.
actually. It's like a gift God has given me. I enjoy
Your husband is
cleaning.
like, yes.
It's a joy for me to clean. It's like, I don't know, it's time to worship God. It always has been. It's what I had to do, so you got to make the best of whatever it is God puts before you.
That's good.
That just was what it was.
That's awesome. Sam, my brother?
My first job was at Strike Bowling Alley.
Oh,
Yeah. Not here though.
Okay.
Not here though. It was the summer of 2006. My dad was living in DC, so he moved me up there with him for the summer.
Yeah.
And my uncle was the GM of the bowling alley.
Oh,
so
snap.
he was like, "You're gonna work out with me, and then you're gonna go work for your uncle." And I'm
there
like,
you go.
All right, cool.
Okay, I'm gonna throw you on the spot now. What is the craziest job you've ever had? Or like, maybe not crazy, but you're like, oh, I will never do that again.
Waiting tables at TGIF.
there you go.
You had to wear flare back then with the suspenders, and you had to have 15 pieces of flare required.
I mean,
so
that's
it's like
where
Office
it's at,
Space.
though. I mean, when you were, I guess. No, I don't know. Whatever.
There's like a whole like underbelly to the restaurant world that we won't go into today. So.
Not today. Not for today's episode.
Maybe a different one.
Different
one.
What's the weirdest one, or like one you're like?
Craziest one I've had, and it was fun, but I couldn't do it because it gave me massive headaches. Okay. So I like legitimate headaches, not like stressed out headaches.
Yeah.
I was a range officer for a gun range.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
and that was it was the lead powder that gave me the headaches.
Yeah, that's what I'm
saying. I couldn't
not
do
the
that.
sound, but the lead.
I couldn't do it for more than 2 days.
Wow.
Because the migraine literally felt like an axe was through my head. But that was like the craziest one, especially like my second day there was a dude that came in with like all his guns. And he barely knew how to use them, and they kept getting jammed on him, and he's like, "Can you do this for me?" I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah. America. Well, that's awesome. Well, I mean, I appreciate you guys sharing. For me, I think my first job was I was a lifeguard at a pool, you know, so I did that. And then the worst job I've ever had was those big semis, you know, that were full of like boxes. We would have to unload them and then load them up. No, it wasn't, because they would call you at whatever time and you had to show up. And if you didn't show up, you were done. You were fired. It was horrible. And it was just horrible. It was just, everyone hated their job. No one wanted to be there. So we were kicking boxes. And yeah, it's just, I did hate, not because it was like tough. It was just, I don't know what it was. It was just sucky. Because sometimes it's 3 in the morning, sometimes 3 in the afternoon, and you had to go. And
my husband did that job too. And he quit that job.
Yeah, I quit.
For the same reason.
Yeah, I quit. Yep. It was bad. But anyways, going on from career and calling, you know, we all serve in a young adult ministry at some capacity. And I think that our young adults, they have, I'm not going to say a misconception, but what we want to do is better help them understand what is a career and what is a calling. And so first, like, let's dissect those two. What is a career and what is a calling? What do you guys think? Anybody?
You want to go first?
Well, they're definitely different.
Yeah.
I believe that if you think that they're the same, then we can add clarity to that, because a career is definitely something you choose, but a calling as a Christian, I mean, we literally have one general calling, and that's to go and tell others about the gospel and baptize people in the name of Jesus, and to disciple other people and to teach them and train them. And that is our calling. And really nothing else is our calling. You know, the Bible doesn't really talk much about career. I don't really think God cares much about what you do, as long as it's not illegal or immoral.
Yeah, for real.
You know,
as long as it honors the Lord in some fashion.
Correct,
you know?
correct. And that you are a good worker, that you're giving a good name to Jesus. I mean, like so they are definitely different. You know, we are called to this great commandment, and everything else is just really how you make money and how you make a living.
Right.
You know, it's a vehicle.
Yeah.
But hopefully, you know, like a platform for you to shine your calling on really right?
For sure. That's a lot. You want to expand on that a little bit?
The calling one, I do believe it's the same. I think we all have a general calling. And I think the Lord does give like individual callings to people to go to certain places or do certain things, like, and that I feel like kind of changes every so often. Like he leads you into different areas and different seasons of your life, and you're called to do something else in each of those areas. Career-wise, I think the same thing. Honestly, if you got to make money, find something that interests you so you're not bored out of your mind in what you're doing, and do that as best as you can.
For sure. And so you guys, obviously you shared a little bit, you work with Mary Kay, you work with Youth Health, and so those are not technically ministerial jobs that people would think, oh, calling is, you know, just ministry, things like that. But when was the first time that you guys like really felt like, hey, this is my calling and this is my career, I guess, for this season or whatever? When was that moment that you guys knew?
I always knew what I was called to do as a Christian, like that general calling. But when did I find out my specific calling, like ministry-wise? I realize now that God was training me up at a very young age to be an encourager to women. Because my mom was a single mom, my dad had been arrested, and this is why I invented this business to clean homes. And I was her, like, it was my idea. I'm the one who took her to the bank to open the bank and told her we could do this. I was constantly encouraging her that we could do this, like we could clean enough homes. I constantly was doing the math, you know? And so I didn't realize then that God was like, our burdens, our past, our pain, God repurposes that. Like, and today I realize, of course he put me into Mary Kay. And this would have been the last thing for my mind, because I could have cared less about makeup, skincare. Like, I was such a tomboy. All my friends were guys. I was on a basketball court, volleyball field. I mean, like this, that's what I did. Even my career, because I studied math, I was an actuary, which is a male-dominated industry. Like, I was just always with the guys. But I didn't realize that God actually wanted me to mentor women. And he used that experience with my mom to develop that. Like, I could see clearly now, you know, hindsight is 20/20, as they say. But he put this burden in me for women. And then when he brought me into Mary Kay, it totally broke my heart to see what I saw. To see women who weren't seeing their children and couldn't take care of their families and had no life and were just in the rat race, you know? And I was like, oh my God, like he's so, so, so good that he's allowed me a place to really have a specific calling. Like you said, we all have general, but like that was my specific calling, and to heal me all at the same time, because I really wanted to be like a guy. He healed me from all of that, and And he did it in an amazing way. So I think that God is perfect in everything that he does. Yeah. He is so good that he knows us intimately and meets us right where we are in a way. I mean, I think he actually allows cliffhangers to be orchestrated in our lives, to put us between a rock and a hard place so that we say yes to, I really do. If anybody now my sister was homecoming queen, right? So when people found out I was in Mary Kay, they would always tell my mom, oh, you mean Candy's in Mary Kay? They're like, she would be like, no, Auri. They're like, no, you mean Candy. She'd be like, no, Auri. And they would be like, Auri? And she's like, right? Like, so, like, it would not have been me. Yeah. But God will orchestrate cliffhangers in our life to really put us in that place, to lead us and to guide us if we're not being obedient, which I wasn't. Yeah. I was not being obedient to what he was calling me to do. I was just running in my own lane, not going to him for direction, and still he took care of me. Yeah. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you sharing that. You said many powerful things that, and especially one that kind of spoke out is, I think that God was orchestrating your upbringing and, things with your mom, and he was using that to then eventually in the future is like, no, I'm going to use this for my glory. And then that's where you find your power, your calling, and you were using that for the kingdom of God. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of young adults, they feel like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? I'm like, sometimes we'll never know, because that's the reality of life. We'll never know why things happen to us when we were little or things happening right now. But sometimes the Lord kind of gives us that little glimpse of like, this is why. Sam, you want to share a little bit about when that happened to you? You understood, like, this is my calling in life.
Yeah. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents split when I was younger. I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. My parents split up. So it was kind of like mom was always keeping us in church for everything. Yeah. And I think for me, it was just my upbringing. My upbringing wasn't bad. But probably like around 17, I stepped out of the church. And I stayed out of the church for 5-6 years, almost. I think it was like when I was 23 is when I came back. Yeah. But in those years, I was like the prodigal son, like debauchery. Like, that's all it was with me. Yeah. And it was funny because I remember being 20 years old and working at Best Buy in the warehouse. And I've had like tons of different jobs.
Yeah, I love it. That's good. Yeah, it's good.
And I remember sitting in there, and it was like a Tuesday afternoon. It was funny, Tuesday afternoon. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and dude, it was dead. There was no one in the store. There was no orders coming through. I was working by myself the morning shift, and I'm sitting in there. The warehouse is clean. There's nothing going on, and I'm like, I literally feel like I'm wasting my life. No, wow. And I hadn't prayed in forever, and I was like, all right, Lord, like.
And that was when you were far from God.
That was when I was far from God, wow. And I was like, okay, God, like, I don't want to waste my life anymore. What would you have me do? Like, and I feel like it was almost like an audible, like, go into ministry. And I was like,
wow.
What? And I'm like, that's weird. And sure, why not? And then I was like, let me go ask my coworkers what they think about that. And I would walk around, and I went to like 4 different departments. And I'm like, hey, what do you guys think if I went like to like work for a church, like work in ministry? And they all looked at me like, they all took the same, it was different coworkers in different departments all around the store. And all 4 of them said the same thing. I could actually see you doing that, but are you even religious? And I was like, you're right. So I literally like took that, and I was like, yeah, I'm not religious. I'm not going to do that. And it was funny. I felt like that was like my calling, like the Lord telling me like, go into ministry. Like, and I ran away from that for like 2 or 3 years. And I think it was like 2.5 years into that, that like I had a cliffhanger. Yeah. I had a cliffhanger for my life. Wow. And I was like, okay, God, it's yours. I'm sorry that I've been running away from you for 2.5 years. What is it that you would have me do? Literally, when I turned over my life, it was like, all right, cool. Like, got a new job, got a new car, immediately got into seminary, like connected with Christ Fellowship. Literally just like, God was just like door. And I was like, okay, if every single door is opening, then I'm headed in the right direction. And then really just like, I think it was sitting with you in 2018, talking to a bunch of students. Cause for me personally, like my calling, I feel now, I didn't find that until my late 20s, where I was like, okay, I truly do think I am meant to like disciple young adults because of my young adult age, where I was like, I didn't really have anyone guiding me. I didn't have anyone discipling me. I didn't have anyone pouring into my life. And I'm like, okay, if I would have had that then, I probably wouldn't have gone through those 5-6 years of debauchery. I probably would have had someone that would have been like, hey, why don't you come over here? Hey, what are you doing with your life? Hey, what are you doing in your career? How are you getting into this? And my parents were there, but it's like, who listens to their parents when they're that age? Yeah. Sorry, mom and dad. But I think it was like with you in 2018, like that's what like really struck me, where I was like, hey, seniors, you're graduating, where are you going? Right. And I was like, wait. It's a big deal. What do you mean, where are they going? Yeah, there's nothing here. And I'm like,
I think that's why like the burden for like the generation that we lead for young adults is so big, because that's really, you know, I think that different people have different kind of defining moments, or they have the aha, but a lot of times they have to figure it out as they go. And I think that's where our young adults, a lot of them get so frustrated. I'm like, but should I be a doctor? Should I be this? But if I do a doctor, how can I serve God? And they kind of twist. I'm like, you can be a doctor and serve God and it'd be beautiful, you know? But I remember for me too, just really quick if I can share, because I remember I knew from a young age too that I was called to ministry. You know, I'm a PK, MK, and my dad, I remember, was preaching. I wasn't saved, which is crazy how God and the Spirit of God works. I was not saved. And remember, I must have been like 5, I probably was like 6, almost 7 years old. And I was watching my dad. I was sitting in the front, because I was exactly where my mom had to sit us, right in the front. I'm like, I don't want to be here, you know? But I was sitting and I was watching my dad, and I just felt an overwhelming, like, that's what you're called to do. And it was weird. I was 6 years old. I'm a little jit. I haven't even received Jesus. I've heard the gospel many times, but I've never put my faith, my trust, my hope in him. And I'm like, okay. But I just kind of ignored it. To make a long story short, I remember I'm like 17, I'm 18 years old. Lauren and I had just broken up. All right, she's my wife now. Baby, I love you. And we broke up, and I was like in a crossroads. I just felt like what you were feeling at Best Buy. I'm like, what am I doing with my life, you know? That was my defining moment. And I remember the 2 questions. I was sitting with my youth pastor, and he asked me, and I think that whoever's listening, you know, or watching this, I think it'll bless you too. But I remember I was sitting in his black F-150. Shout out to Pastor Luis Egipciaco from Elevate Church. I love you, bro. And he said, Gabe, why did God make you? And I gave him the general, which is, I'm like, oh, to bring him glory and to do the mathetuas, to make disciples and followers. You know, I gave him that. He's like, okay. But why did God make you? Give you your stories, your thoughts, your reasoning. And I'm like, man, he made me for ministry. Like, I knew mine. He's like, he made me for ministry. And then he said, okay. He said, is your every decision and step geared in that direction? He's like, everything that you're doing, is it following why God has made you? And I was like, no. I wasn't serving in church that much at that moment. I had just, you know, broken up with the relationship that wasn't honoring God. And I looked at my life, and I'm like, no, I'm not there. And I remember at that point, like, I was enrolled in fire school. I just finished my EMT because I was going to be a firefighter, because girls liked firefighters. So I'm like, hey, you know, they paid well, all that stuff. But then I let go of that. And then I just remember, like, I just surrendered it all, and I called seminary, enrolled immediately. And it was just, God started to open the doors and align those things. And, you know, I am where I am today because, you know, Pastor Lewis had that conversation with me. And so, you know, Pastor Lewis having that, you know, the conversation with me is like, what's something that you could also encourage a young adult today? Like, one that's struggling with a career and a calling. What's something that you could tell them, like, hey, if you're struggling with deciding whether this or that, what's something you can encourage them with?
Oh my goodness. I would say that it not be a search that God is not involved in, because I know that was me. Because I was so tired of being poor, and I knew what God called me to do, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that because I'll be poor forever. So I'm gonna go open up a business, you know?
Yeah.
And that was teaching. Like, he gave me the gift of teaching. And guess what I do? I teach women how to start a business and teach them how to take, like, I'm back at teaching. He just laughs. He just laughs. He's just sitting up there laughing. And so, like, it's we live in this world that is so consumed with career. What I would say to a young adult is, if you are anxious about it, you probably haven't handed it to God, not fully. Like this anxiety is, you're acting just like the rest of the world. Like, how are we supposed to be the salt of the earth, a light on a hill, if we're acting just like every other young adult out there, if we have Jesus in us? And it's idolatry. At the end of the day, we're so self-consumed with the money we're gonna make and the jobs we're gonna have and the houses and the lifestyle and this.
Instagrammable life.
All of it, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And you know what I would say is, whatever career you're looking to go do, go shadow like 3 to 5 people that are doing that and see if you would trade lives with them. Because what kind of a relationship do they have with their wife? What kind of relationship do they have with their children? How involved are they? Are they able to just be there at their kids' things? And I see these people that, whatever they're driving, whatever house they're living in, but they don't have quality of life. And at the end of the day, you know, God calls the men specifically to be providers, protectors, and priests of their home. If you're not available to do that, you know, it's like there's that verse that says that, you know, we gain the world and lose our soul, right? Like, what's the point? Like, we forfeit our souls. Like, what's the point of that? And even women, as a woman, like, what's the point of having this career and this title when you're not going to see your babies and you're not going to raise them? Like, you know, I'm just so huge on that. I realize and understand now what it really means to be different in this world. That people look at you. I remember, you guys might know her because her daughter is in young adults at Kendall, Janet Ravello. Janet and Marcus Ravello. They've been mentors to me for a long time, many, many, many years. And I would always see their home had this peace. It didn't matter when you showed up. They were always calm. And I was like, they just mentor people and disciple people whenever. And I'd never seen so much peace and so much calm in a home, and this availability and how they raise their children. And I think that really is a value, right? That's the treasure. That's eternal impact. And that really matters so much. So if you're obsessing about it, hand it over to God, ask for forgiveness, allow him to heal you from it. There's obviously something in there. I know for me, this was me. I had to be healed from that ambition and that crave and that drive. He had to heal me from that. And then he renews it and he repurposes it. And you know, the other thing I would say is this. Oh my goodness, think about all the mistakes you've made and how good God has been. And you still have all that you have. And you've probably never gone a day of your life without eating or a roof over your head, right? So you really can't mess this thing up if God is your partner. Like there's, like, he's got you. Like, nobody loves you more than he does. He's got you totally 100%. If I had heard that earlier, I would have been a less anxious Christian, and I probably would have been a better light in this world, you know, just to not be like the rest of them, right?
That's very powerful.
You know, I think young adults walking around in colleges, if you're just like chill, like, no, Jesus has got me no matter what, like, you instantly are a magnet to other young adults that are living this anxious life, concerned and worried. That's just not for us. God paid for that on the cross, nailed it to the cross. We can't take that on. Like, that's been paid for, forgiven, done with. We need to deburden ourselves from all of that stuff.
That's really good. You dropped so many bombs and then that whole thing. I was like, where do I start? I think that, I mean, the biggest thing is, I mean, that resonates and glues a lot of things, pieces a lot of things together, is like the difference between us and the world is the security and that we have and the hope that we have in Jesus. And whether it's a doctor, whether it's a custodial person, whether it's a pressure cleaning person, whether it's a US, whatever we were talking about before, whether it's working at DJIF, whatever it is, like, the Lord has got our back. But one of the things that I was talking about with Sam too, and then, because we were talking about advice to give to young adults, one of the things that you actually posted on your social media about also this calling thing, and I thought it was so powerful. Can you just expand on that? Because I think that there's a lot of Gen Zs and millennials too that I think they're being raised in a generation of like, oh, ministry's so cool. Like, ministries, I'm like, nah, bro, it's not. I mean, there's cool things about it, but, you know, one of the things that you said that I thought was brilliant too is like, go shadow somebody. I'm sure I mean, if a pastor's doing it well, okay, but there's so many pastors that are not. I mean, we're just gonna put it out there that young people that want to be in ministry, like, go see their life and like the burdens that they carry and the phone calls at 3:30 a.m. in the morning, you know? So what would you say also to those that maybe are like, ooh, I'm gonna use it just like ministry is sexy. Like, what would you say to someone that thinks that, right?
It's not. I think for people that look at it with that type of like attractiveness of like, oh, I want to go do this because it sounds fun. It sounds like sexy, like you said, like it's very attractive towards me. Like it's something that I feel like I can do and I'm not going to feel like I'm working. That is the biggest lie of your life. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the biggest thing I could say is like, if you're looking at ministry as a career, you have to remember that it's not a career. Yeah. Like it is a calling. Right. Like there's very few people. We had the opportunity to go to this conference up in West Palm, and they had like all these different breakouts. And one of the things that in one of the breakouts that I was sitting in, the guy he's one of the pastors for the church. He said, there are so few people who have the honor and pleasure of doing ministry vocationally. That like struck me. That's kind of like what really kind of like sparked that. Yeah. That I was like, dang, that's like, he's right. Like there are not a lot of people that get to do this vocationally. Like I do ministry as a volunteer, right? And I think a big portion of that for me, and even kind of like where that came from me as well, is like, you can do ministry without it being your job. Right. If you feel like you're called into doing ministry, go serve your church. Amen. Like you can be a high capacity volunteer. Yeah. And I look at it with the apostles, and I look at it with Paul. Like Paul was a tent maker. Yeah. Like Paul had a career outside of what he was called to do. Like in Acts 9, you look at Acts 9 and God told Ananias, hey, I have called Paul and I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Yeah. It never once said, I've called Paul to be a tent maker. Yeah. It never once said, I've called Paul to, be a Pharisee. It never said any of that. He said, I'm going to call you to see how much you're going to suffer for my name. Yeah. And as much as we read throughout the New Testament, we see that Paul went around as a missionary and did all these amazing gospel works and suffered for Jesus' name, but he made his money in his career as being a tent maker. Yeah,
that's really good, bro.
And then the same thing with Peter. I look at Peter, and never did it say that Peter abandoned his fishing company. Right. He owned a fishing company. The man was a fisherman by trade, but he was still an apostle. So he did all of his works for the church, but he still had his business. Right. So that's one of those things where it's like, if you truly do feel called as a young person into the ministry, do that first and foremost. Shadow someone. I mean, we have a leadership track within our church, and we look for certain people that are, if you're saying that you're called into ministry, but I don't see you in a small group. I don't see you, right? I don't see you serving in a ministry. I don't see you leading a small group. I don't see you learning more, or posting stuff. Like, and not to say that like your social media should be all about that, but like if I go on your social media and I don't see nothing that looks godly,
yeah, for real, yeah.
Or if I do see, like, there's one that gets me that it's like the over poster of religious stuff. Sure. Like, I want to see your life. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see you constantly preaching. I don't want to see you constantly sharing stuff, which is good because, use your platform for whatever. Right. But like, if I don't see who you are, then I'm not really going to be able to know who you are. Yeah. In the same sense, within the church, like if we see hundreds of people here all the time, but we only see maybe a quarter of that serving. So then out of that quarter that are serving, how many of those people are actually called into ministry to do it vocationally or even to do it at a higher capacity? Like, first get into that wave. First see how much you're like really serving and like really how much we can like pull you in and train you up to be one of the next leaders within the church. Like, and eventually, who knows? Maybe you do get a job within ministry, or maybe the Lord has called you to do ministry and have a career on the side.
Yeah, I love that you said that because I was talking about with Auri about this earlier, but I don't know. We don't know who said it. But one of the things that like the confusion, we'll start to like to wrap up and close down after this. But one of the confusions about career and calling. So like career is like something that you're talented at, right? Career is something that you're kind of wired that way, and you're like and then also it could be just something that you're paying the bills. Like, hey, I actually suck at this, but it's paying the bills. Like, in reality, it's like fake it till you make it, right? But that's your career. Doesn't mean that that's your calling, right? And there's a lot of young adults that struggle with like, I don't know if I should study this, study that. And then there's a big confusion between what is a career and what is a calling. And something that we were talking about is a career is what you paid for, right? But a calling is what you're made for. Which means like, this is why God has wired you, built you, put that story in your life, that in your DNA. It's what you're made for. And so I guess like, as we're like simmering down for our young adults, like, you know, what we want to encourage them to do is like, hey, if God is, you know, opening the doors for you to study this, study that, do it. You know, and I love what you said. Be faithful at it. Be awesome at it. I love like Daniel, when they said, hey, test us for like the next, you know, period of time. It said that they were better than the rest. We, as believers in our careers, we shouldn't be lazy employees, lazy, showing up late. What kind of testimony are you showing about Jesus?
And complaining all the time instead of being grateful for the work God gives us. Like, there's no room for that. Like, how can God bless you with more if you're not being grateful with the work you do have? It's a blessing just to work. I mean, I cleaned toilets for many years and I was always grateful. We had work and a house. And I think that that's why God progressed us forward. Like, if we're not grateful where we are, we're done. We're done with.
I know we could keep talking about this forever, and so we might have to do a part 2, who knows, but thank you guys so much for coming, Auri. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Sam, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Like a quick 10-second, is there anything else that you want to say that's on the top of your head?
Yes. Oh my gosh. We are so obsessed with what career we're going to do. And if you really look at the population, the percentage of people who actually do what they study to do, it's like, I don't even want to throw a number out there, but it's really, really, really tiny. It's like, I know I don't. I have a degree in math. That's not what I use. So, you know what? Chances are you're probably going to change careers a few times. And we were just talking about this. David was a shepherd, then he was a harpist, then he was a warrior, then, you know, he led a band of men like bandits, then, you know, then he was stealing women, then he was...
Don't make that your career, please. Like, not that your
Then he became king, but he always had the same calling. His calling never changed. You know what? Don't be so obsessed with your career. Just follow the next step. See where God leads you and guides you. I would never have thought this was going to be my life. And yet here I am. And so just go to the next step. Don't allow it to obsess you, and be okay with what God has for you as well too. And I love what you said, that you were running from it. I think you were running from it. I was running from it too. I think that's why we're also passionate about YA. Like, you know, always lived my life to the right until my 20s, and then I went way left. And so you guys here at YA, open up with someone. Just be honest, be authentic. Tell them what you're really worried about. We've been there. We have all been there. And there's someone here that is volunteering, prays for you, loves you, and is not going to judge you.
That's good. I love it. Anything else you want to share? Really quick.
Yeah, for sure. As far as career goes, man, as long as it's honoring, take every opportunity that comes your way, that's going to grow you. Don't take anything that's lateral. But if you're trying to grow within your career, take every opportunity. If your boss throws a new report at you, do the report. Learn how to do it. If there's another job that comes up that does more responsibility than yours, don't be afraid of it. Take it. And just allow yourself to grow within your career. And then your calling, don't run away from it. Like, what? Even if you are on track or staring at your calling or like volunteering in some way in the smallest capacity, as long as you're on track with your calling and what it is, continue to do that. Like, don't run away from it. I think running away from it is the worst mistake that you could ever make.
Because you can quit your career, but you can't quit your calling.
Exactly.
Amen.
So, hey, young adults, we hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Again, thank you so much for our guests. You guys are amazing. And we pray that this was edifying to you. If it is, would you just encourage somebody, share it to somebody, send it to somebody, get a screenshot, whatever you can do. Let someone know about career versus calling. And young adults, we love you so much. And there's so much more to come in the year. And we can't wait to see you guys, all right? Till the next time. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into our young adult podcast, Adultish. If you liked what you heard, please consider following us on social media. On Instagram, our handle is @youngadults.cf, and also follow our church at CF Miami. We're going to be posting this incredible content once a month, so we'll see you next time.